Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins Trilogy, also known as Byron Sidious. Today we're going to conclude the presentation of Captured, a Metroid fanfiction, Part 12. "Where do you think you're going, you coward?" Molly shrieked at Driver, as the amphibian pilot darted across the bridge, clearly heading for the bridge's only other doorway, marked escape pods. "Don't you dare even think it," she added, leveling her own blaster pistol at the diminutive pilot. "Captain, it's over. We've lost," Driver pleaded. "She has killed at least a dozen of our people, including Wrench and Rivet, and starting with Digger. We are completely and totally fucked here, ma'am. And I'm sorry, but you always told me that I should remember to put my money behind whoever's going to win, right? Well, I'm doing that right now, and I intend to live another day and win on my own," he said. Molly took aim, but noted the way that Driver suddenly stiffened up, and felt her own neck stiffen, the tiny hairs standing on end. Behind her, another voice spoke. "Let him go," said Samus. Molly slowly swiveled her head, looking out of the corner of her eye at the suited bounty hunter, whose own arm cannon hung at her side, aimed at the floor. "I have no qualms with one or two of your people trying to escape for now." Molly nodded, cleared her throat. "And I also have no qualms separating your head from the rest of you if you turn that weapon on me, Molly Mash. Throw it away." Molly did as she was bid, and Driver pelted away through the sensor doors into the escape pod bay. Molly shifted around with her hands out at her sides while she was facing Samus, who was herself angled slightly toward the view screen at the front of the bridge. "What are you looking at?" Molly asked. "Watch," came Samus's reply. Molly turned to look at the screen, which showed the front view from the dozer's aft sensors. Driver's escape pod flashed into view, streaking away from the ship, and a few seconds later, Samus's gunship pelted into view and fired a single pair of energy bolts at it, reducing it to so much astral dust and debris. "Mother of God," Molly moaned, shaking her head. Her knees gave out under her, and the career criminal felt her lower lip quivering as she withdrew into herself. "Why? Why did you do this to us? What kind of freak of nature are you?" Samus approached her stoically, each heavy clomp of one of her armored feet reverberating through the bridge floor. "I have been asked that question on numerous occasions," the bounty hunter replied, her own tone now lifted slightly into the range of curiosity. "It occurred to me several years ago that in order to find out the answer to that question, I would need to locate the labs or storage facility holding the records on the original ancestry experiments that were responsible for my creation. I have discovered in my travels that there are a few folks who know where they are. Unfortunately, these people will not give me the information through the usual means of armed and violent coercion." "And how would you know that?" Molly asked with a sniffle, looking up at Samus, who had knelt down beside her, using the cannon as a prop to hold herself up as she leaned slightly forward. "I attempted as such. It did not work," Samus replied. "Only payment of a rather considerable sum of galactic standard credits will satisfy before they will part with the information I seek. As such, I have to apprehend high-value targets in order to save the necessary funds required." "Including us," Molly said. "Including you. You are all far more valuable to me alive than dead, but I cannot at this juncture be picky," said the hunter bluntly. "Frankly, I could turn you all in as corpses and carbon stains. Your ship alone, brought in intact and in functional order, will get me the credits required, but only barely." "So we're what? Expendable?" Molly asked with a scoff. "Effectively, yes," said Samus, rising to her feet. "But I would prefer to maximize my ship's capabilities, and modifications don't come cheap. Nor do the toxins your crewmate inadvertently fell victim to within my armored suit. They shall have to be replaced, at cost." Samus put the end of her cannon's barrel against the side of Molly's head and spoke once more, her tone flat and formal. Will you issue a surrender command to the remainder of your crew? I will, said Molly. Excellent. Have them disarm and meet Jarek down in the detention cell hallway, Samus said. Molly used the PA system to inform her surviving crewmates that the dozer had been overtaken and that they were to move to the detention cells if they wanted to survive the ordeal. Samus then spoke to the medical robot, issuing brief commands to him before addressing the rogue captain once more. I disabled his free will program the moment you left the medical bay, the bounty hunter informed her. It wasn't his fault, nor yours. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Molly asked, summoning what little dignity she felt she still had to rise to her feet. That was the intention, yes. If it has failed to do so, you have my apologies, said Samus. You should head down to the detention cells now as well. As soon as I signal my ship, it will transmit a coded message to First Earth Federation vessels approximately 10 hours away. You will not be left waiting long. I will go down to retrieve Hammer and bring him in as well. You didn't kill him? Molly asked, surprised. No. He surrendered without much of a fight. He began to draw on me, and I fired on his weapon, destroying it. He immediately put his hands above his head and surrendered. He then acknowledged his understanding that if he resisted further, I would terminate his life. I see, said Molly, slowly heading for the bridge door back into the corridor, ahead of the bounty hunter. Is swearing to get revenge on you considered resistance? It is, said Samus, and Molly heard the quiet whir of the arm cannon being brought online. Then I think I'll go ahead and keep my mouth shut for now, Molly replied. Back aboard her own gunship, Samus removed her helmet and stepped out of her armor, backing it into the auto repair dock closet behind her pilot seat. The onboard AI trilled to life as she sat down. Welcome back, Samus, it said in a voice similar to Jarek's. The Admiral is waiting for you on Channel 48. Put him through, Zeus, she replied. The viewport in front of her flickered, and a hollow display of a tall, dark-skinned figure in a deep blue uniform of the First Earth Federation Naval Forces came into view. Admiral Williams, a pleasure to see you again, Samus said with a faint smile. Likewise, Aran, he said. Our scanners are showing some signs of struggle and more than a couple of corpses. How many principals are still alive? 2, sir. Molly Mash and the man known as Hammer. The others were unfortunately unavoidable casualties, sir, including the one they called Wrench. She attempted to infiltrate and operate my armor, sir. The Admiral grunted, shaking his head. Well, Mother's not going to be happy about that, but I'll handle the heat there. Anything interesting we might want to know about on board the ship? Delian Zod had offered the wrecking crew a substantial amount of galactic credits for the delivery of myself and my ship intact to one of his operations bases in the system. But he red-flagged them later on, so I imagine he's abandoned the site, or at least won't be visiting it again himself. We can spare a scout ship or two to swing over and take a look, said the Admiral. Anything else? It should be noted that Hammer offered minimal resistance when I confronted him, and he accepted the terms of his arrest without rebellion. He will likely be a model prisoner. You just don't let him have anything that can be fashioned into a weapon. He's actually quite talented. You'll see what I mean when your people document the maintenance chamber on one of the lower decks. There's nothing else to report unless you want to give the medical robot back its free will. Technically, we have to, so it can be charged and detained accordingly, said the Admiral. The Artificial Life Autonomy Act requires it. Then you'll have to utilize the override command, Vector Corp Override Input Command 1954. Then establish yourself as the new primary user and order him to reactivate the free will programming, sir, Samus said. My payment? Already being transferred as we speak, Miss Aran, the Admiral replied. Were you injured at all during the operation, Samus? The Svestri bounty hunter looked down at a console of buttons, switches, and lights, her data all displayed before her in neat rows and columns. It all made perfect sense to her, though she well understood that most people would have no clue what they were looking at. Samus? No, sir. I wasn't injured, she said quietly. But I am worried. About what, Samus? It's something Molly Mash said during my apprehension of her aboard the Dozer's bridge, Samus said. She called me a freak of nature, sir. I know you might agree, but I think she's right. That's why I need to do this. The Admiral's forehead furrowed as he looked at her on his own end. You're still intent on finding those records, then? He asked. I have to, sir. If anything pans out, I'll contact you as promised. It's just that program was partly funded by the Federation, Iran, said the Admiral. Some of the information you come across could potentially be classified. And I'm sure you'll be able to figure out what is and what isn't when I'm finished with my own research, sir, she said evenly, allowing the chill of emotional shutdown to come over her. I ran out. She cut the communications connection, clearing her viewport, and punched in her new destination coordinates. She had another mission to work on now, one that offered no monetary reward, but which she had become desperate to complete. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, thus concludes Captured, a Metroid fanfiction, as written and presented by yours truly. I do hope that you've enjoyed the tale, ladies and gentlemen, as much as I enjoyed writing it in the first place. It was an interesting little exercise. That's all for now, folks. I have not yet made a choice or a selection on what the next audio presentation will be for this channel, but I'm sure with a little bit of digging I'll figure out what the next tale should be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading.